Hey guys, what's up? It's Charlie here, and today we're going to be looking at why winning the lottery is the worst thing that can happen to you. But before we find out why and how, please subscribe and press the notification bell too. First off, we have relationships. Now, you may think that winning the lottery would be a great thing when it comes to relationships. But if you think your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband or wife would love you more if you won the lottery, then think again. Finances can already be tough in a relationship, but it's even worse when you win the lottery. First off, a lottery winner in a relationship makes a massive power imbalance. People already get stressed out when their husband or wife earns more money than them. So just imagine how bad it is if your husband or wife suddenly has millions of dollars in the bank. This can leave the person with less money feeling very undervalued. And if one person in a relationship has won the lottery and they're not married, then this can also be very complex. This can make some very nasty legal issues you need to wade through. One person winning the lottery creates a massive sense of entitlement to their partner. The partner of the lottery winner may feel that some of that money should belong to them. The New York Times actually coined the term the lottery curse. That's because a ginormous percentage of couples who win the lottery end up getting divorced. In 2009, Les and Samantha Scadding won $60 million, but only months later they divorced. David and Victoria Jones also won $3 million just a few months into their marriage. This led to splashing out on luxury items and even an affair which apparently ruined their life. Also in 2012, Adrian and Gillian Bayfort won $200 million. But within 1 year, this couple had broken up despite having all the money in the world. Next up is greedy people. Do you think you know any greedy people? You may be saying no, but that might change when you win the lottery. You suddenly become the person everyone's going to for money. Also, friends and very distant family members may feel that they're entitled to your money. You also become the victim of lawsuits and scams, but we'll get into that later. But if you think other people being greedy is the only annoying thing lottery winners have to face, then think again. Oftentimes, the greediness can actually come from themselves. Take David Edwards, who won $27 million in 2006. He ended up getting greedy and went on ginormous shopping sprees. He bought things like limousine businesses, Lamborghinis, horses, and houses. But sadly, he ended up living in a grimy storage unit, poorer than he'd ever been. 70% of lottery winners go broke within 7 years, and that's because of their own greed a lot of the time. Also, if you win the lottery with other people, then this creates even more greed. In 2006, a woman named Sandra Haynes and a few colleagues won $224 million. But despite this, she ended up with only $6 million of that money. That's because she said she had to endure other greedy people trying to get her money. She says this caused lots of emotional pain, as a lot of the time it was people she loved. She said the people she loved the most turned into vampires and tried to suck out the money from her. I guess it's true when they say greed really does bring out the worst in people. Next up is enabler. You may think that having all the money in the world to do anything you want is a good thing, but sometimes the things people want to do are not good. It's no secret that money can be an enabler for very bad habits. Just think, if you don't need to work and can spend all your money on parties, substances and more things, that's not going to be a good life. Take one man named Jack Whitaker. He won $316 million. However, he wasted lots of it in clubs. Also, he left nearly $1 million in his car, but somebody stole his car and, of course, the money. Not only that, his daughter and granddaughter both passed away due to substance abuse. He blamed all of these bad things on his lottery winnings, so it's clear that money doesn't always buy happiness. In 2016, a lottery winner named Ronnie Music invested into a substance ring. Because of this, he was sentenced to 21 years in prison. He said he could have avoided getting into that kind of business, but the temptation was too strong as he had all this money. Not only that, a man named Michael Carroll won $15 million in 2002. However, he spent everything on exotic women, parties, substances, quad bikes and more. However, that same year he won the lottery, he went to prison because of possession. So it's clear that if you have all the money in the world and you're not too responsible, this is not a good mix and can ruin your life. Next up is danger. Did you know that the 6th richest man in the world, Mark Zuckerberg, spent $22 million on security last year? That's because when you have a lot of money, things can get dangerous. However, lottery winners don't often have giant security details, as they're often just regular people who've won lots of money. Sadly, there's many people who have had their lives taken just after receiving their lottery checks. In 2016 in Georgia, USA, a man named Gregory Birch was taken out in his own home. This was just 2 months after he won over $400K. The people who took him out actually intended to steal his money. In 2012, on the same day his lottery check was issued, a man named Uj Khan was taken out by cyanide. A man named William Post also won $16.2 million. But just 2 weeks later, his own brother hired a hitman to take him out. It's clear when you win the lottery, people get greedy and want to take your money by any means necessary. So if you do win the lottery, then you can't just go to the store normally. You need to have a security detail at all times and also be very paranoid. Next up is money mismanagement. Most lottery winners aren't geniuses or experts in finance. They're just regular people who all of a sudden have a ton of money. And because of this often means their finances are mismanaged. Many lottery winners think they have all the money in the world and don't bother setting any budgets. Lots of them also don't hire good financial advisors. And also lots of them don't have self-discipline, which leads to their money being stolen, lost, or spent recklessly. You may think that you have self-discipline, but if you suddenly have millions of dollars in the bank, that could change. Also, even when people do get financial advisors, sometimes they get bad ones which steal their money or lose it in bad investments. That's why the first thing all lottery winners should do is contact a good financial advisor. Experts say they should do this even before telling their entire families. And it sure does make sense, as simply sticking to a budget could prevent a lot of these lottery winners from going broke. Coming up next, we have It's Not As Much As You Think. If I told you you won $100 million, you may think that's $100 million in the bank, right? Well, unfortunately, that's not at all the case. Unfortunately, in most countries, lottery winnings are viewed as taxable income. That's why lottery winners have to get top-notch accountants and financial advisors. Recently, the winner of the $1.5 billion Powerball had to pay $400 million in taxes. Not only that, when you win the lottery, you don't get just one big lump sum. Instead, you get it spread out over many years. Of course, you can take it as a lump sum, but that means it's cut in half. For example, if you wanted the $1.5 billion Powerball in a lump sum, that would only be $930 million before taxes. Now, of course, that's still tons of money, but this leads to people thinking they have more than they really do. Then people overspend and get a big shock when it comes to tax day. So if you ever win the lottery, then be sure to get a great financial advisor and accountant to help you with the taxes. And while you're at it, throw some money over to me for giving you this great advice. Next up is trust issues. Do you have a hard time trusting people? Well, just imagine how much harder that would be if you had hundreds of millions of dollars in your bank account. Very rich people are known to keep a small circle, and that's because they often don't trust many people. According to lottery winners, they question every friend or relationship they ever have. They think, do these people like me for me, or are they just trying to get some money? Not only that, it can be very dangerous to become a lottery winner. Just take the guy whose brother hired a hitman to take him out. Not only that, you can become the victim of many scams. There are scammers who go out of their way to try and target people who have won the lottery. They may present it as a great investment opportunity only to scam them out of millions of dollars. And people are also known to try and sue lottery winners for ridiculous things. They may try and jump in front of your car while you're driving because they know you have money. Or they may take a Facebook post from years earlier and say you were defaming them to try and get some of that cash. Sadly, when you win the lottery and you're public about it, you can't live a normal life. So that's why it's best to either keep it under wraps and also keep a very small circle of friends. But even then, you never know who you could trust and who wants some money from you. Coming up next is looked down on. Of course, winning the lottery isn't a choice. It's just something that happens to some very lucky people. But despite this, many people actually look down on lottery winners. One lottery winner named Steve Granger said he would walk around at parties and hear people go, "Ugh, there's those lottery winners." People think that lottery winners are very entitled and didn't have to work for their winnings. Now, that may be true, but it's not their fault they didn't have to work for their money. But this can lead to some lottery winners feeling very awkward and guilty about their sudden winnings. This can cause anxiety and also something called sudden wealth syndrome. This is where people are very emotionally unhappy despite having lots of money after winning the lottery. This can lead to them getting depressed and then self-medicating with things like drink and substances. Next up, we have motivation reducer. Many people work hard out of necessity. If they don't work hard, they won't be able to cover the rent and buy food. But when you're a lottery winner, many people think, I'm rich and I never have to work ever again. Now, that may sound good, but eventually that gets very boring and dull. People often quit their job as soon as they win the lottery, but this causes them to not work hard. If they have tons of money in the bank which has come from nowhere, this leads to them having no motivation. Also, they sometimes feel bad about their winning, seeing as they didn't have to put in any hard work to get it. According to a study by the University of Massachusetts, lottery winners get a thrill when they win, but then nothing else in their life can ever live up to this thrill. They only ever feel the excitement of winning the lottery once, and from then on, it's complete boredom. And finally on the list of reasons why winning the lottery isn't always a good thing, we have money can't buy happiness. We've all heard the phrase money can't buy happiness, and you may have shrugged that off as a thing poor people say. But take it from some of the world's wealthiest, money really can't buy happiness. Donna Micken, who won $35 million in 2007, says she feels very judged everywhere she goes. She says she doesn't feel happy at all and wishes she could have a normal family and friends instead of having all this money. Not only that, a big chunk of lottery winners actually take their own lives. You may think that having all the money in the world equals all the happiness in the world, but unfortunately that's not the way it works. 11 secrets lotteries don't want you to know. Coming up first, we have expiration date. We all know and expect an expiration date on things like milk and meats. But when it comes to lottery tickets, they're just a piece of paper, right? They don't need an expiration date. Well, that's how many people do think, as they're unaware that every lottery ticket has an expiration date. If you knew about this, I'd be very impressed, seeing as many don't, including lottery winners. Now, typically if you win the lottery, you have around 2 to 3 months to claim your winnings. Otherwise, it either rolls over to the next winner or is kept by the lottery company. This almost happened to a man named Jimmy Smith. His ticket won him $24.1 million. But he couldn't find his ticket and therefore couldn't claim it. The New York Lotto put out various posters saying that his date was expiring soon. Luckily, he found his ticket and claimed the money 2 days before it was drawn on May 23, 2017. But just imagine if he literally lost $24.1 million. Legally now, lottery companies have to make people aware that they've won. That's why they spend tons of money advertising winners who haven't claimed yet. So guys, if you buy a lottery ticket, just remember where it is and remember to cash in if you win. The largest amount ever unclaimed was $1.5 billion. Somebody won the Mega Millions lottery jackpot of $1.5 billion and they didn't even claim it. Either Bill Gates is the person who won this ticket or someone is just really dumb. Next up is illegal anonymity. If you ever won the lottery, would you want anyone to know? If you're really smart, the answer should be absolutely not. Many people do publicize that they've won the lottery by choice. But this is usually a terrible idea. It means everyone will want a piece of your money, scammers will come after you, and people will try and sue you for crazy things. Now, in most countries, you're actually allowed to be anonymous if you win the lottery. But in some US states, this is actually illegal and you must declare whether you've won the lottery or not. If you're a private person, then say goodbye to that, as the media love to pick up on lottery winners and document their every move. State lawmakers say that if people who won the lottery were anonymous, this would be very untransparent. But putting people's personal details out there and saying how much money they have isn't usually a good idea. In 2015, Gregory Birch Jr. had his home broken into. The criminals then took his life and stole from him. Sadly, his family was in the house at that very moment. Gregory had won the money only a few months before this happened, and the criminals found out thanks to the media. So if you live in one of these places where anonymity is not legal and you win the lottery, I suggest investing in some security. The actual amount. You may think that people who win the lottery never have to work again, but even when it's a huge amount, this is sometimes not the case. That's because the amount they say you've won isn't usually the actual amount. That's right, even on lottery winnings, Uncle Sam has to take what he has to take. Let's say you win $1 million. Now, you can either say to the lottery company you want it in small segments, or you can say you want it right now. If you want it right now, then you actually only get a percentage of the money, usually around 70 to 80%. Then you'll need to pay a federal 30% tax. Then in the USA you have to pay around 5 to 10% state tax. And even if you didn't opt for it as a lump sum and you want it in increments, you have to pay your taxes on that every single year. So this means that if you won $1 million, you'd actually only end up with $480,000. And that means if you win $1 billion, you only end up with $480 million. Obviously, in either case, that's still a ton of money, but it's not exactly what's advertised, right? This is why many lottery winners go broke, as they believe they've won a lot more than they actually have. So you better get a great financial planner and accountant if you plan on winning the lottery anytime soon. Next up is lottery scammers. As I already said, winning the lottery and having it publicly out there means you'll attract a lot of scammers. People may come to you saying they have a great investment opportunity, promising you tons of money back. But it could turn out to all be one big scam or a bad investment and you lose a ton of cash. But that's not even the worst of lottery scams. Sometimes the scammers are the people actually selling you the lottery tickets. A few years back, Nabil and Jacob Pavin were arrested for scamming a lottery winner. They actually owned a convenience store that sold lottery tickets. The person who bought a lottery ticket in their New York store actually won $1 million, but they told them they'd only won $1,000, trying to keep the $999,000 to themselves. Luckily, these guys were caught and arrested, and the money was given to the rightful winner. Another man named Ahmad Faragala sold something called winning tickets. These were fake tickets which had already won, and then when people went to cash in their prize, they realized they'd been scammed. According to cops, he'd made nearly $250,000 from this scam. That's why you should only buy lottery tickets from authorized retailers. Otherwise, you never know, you could be getting scammed big time. Next up, we have preying on the poor. I'm sure you've heard the lottery be referred to as a poor person's tax. But is this really true, or is it just a nice way to win a ton of money? Well, it turns out people play the lottery more when they're poor to try and get out of poverty. One study from North Carolina found the poorest counties always have the highest ticket sales on the lottery. Apparently around 40% of all lottery players are actually below the poverty line. This is then accentuated by the lottery running very targeted adverts. In their adverts, they may show someone who's poor who then wins a ton of money and then lives a life of luxury. But of course, there's a tiny chance that will actually happen, and it really does prey on the poor. If you need more proof, lottery ticket sales actually rise with unemployment. That's right, the more people who are out of a job, the more ticket sales the lottery gets. In the 2008 financial recession, almost every industry went down except the lottery. Lotteries actually had record sales and made a ton of money from people who were desperate and poor. Next up, we have the real odds. So we've already seen the real amount you actually win if you win the lottery. But what about the actual odds of winning the lottery? I'm sure you've heard that getting struck by lightning is more likely than winning the lottery, and that's absolutely correct. Most of the time in lotteries, you need to pick 6 numbers out of 49 and get them all correct to win the jackpot. That means that to win the jackpot on just the most basic and easy lottery, that's a 1 in 14 million chance. This means even if you buy one lottery ticket a week, it would take you around 300,000 years to actually ever win one. But what are the odds for the most difficult and most bought lottery in the USA, the Mega Millions? Well, the odds for that are even worse, coming in at 1 in 176 million. So unless you're feeling ridiculously good lucky, then I suggest not buying a lottery ticket. But if you've been hit by lightning, bitten by a shark, and hit by a meteorite, then you should buy one. That's because all of those things combined happening to you are more likely than winning the Mega Millions. Next up is lottery donations. So the lottery may not be good for poor people, but at least it helps schools out, right? Lotteries are always bragging about how much they help out school districts. And some lotteries' slogans even involve the words helping out schools. Well, unfortunately, that's not always the case. You see, when lotteries give money to the schools, they're not really giving it directly to the schools. Instead, it actually goes to the state and then is allocated to various things. That's right, for all the money the lottery donates to schools, it may have no effect on the kids whatsoever. That's because it simply goes into the state's general fund and can be used for absolutely anything. Patrick Pierce, a political scientist, even said given a few years, a state would have spent more money on education without a lottery. So even though these lotteries like to brag about how much they help your kids at their school, this is actually not the case. Next up, we have scratch cards. You may be thinking, okay, winning the lottery, unrealistic, but maybe I can win one of those scratch-off cards. Well, unfortunately, the odds of one of those are also equally as terrible. The payout per dollar spent is usually much worse than the normal lottery, and so is the odds sometimes. The most popular scratch cards, the $1 and $5 ones, are the most popular, but also have the worst odds and worst winnings. You're actually better off buying the more expensive $10 and $20 scratch-offs. Barely anyone buys them, but it's actually more worthwhile to buy those than the cheaper ones. They have much better chances of winning and a much better return if you do win. The $1 to $5 tickets are actually low return and are designed to keep you hooked on playing. That's why lots of the time you simply win $1 to $5 back. They want you to buy another one, keep playing, and then buy more expensive ones. So it's actually best to cut out the middleman and buy the most expensive scratch-off possible. So that's why it's best to just buy the most expensive scratch-offs if you're going to buy them at all. But really, with odds worse than the normal lottery, why even bother? And finally on the list of secrets lotteries don't want you to know, we have the downsides. You may think that if you win the lottery, your life will change forever. Well, this is no doubt the case, but it may not change for the good. We've already mentioned how one man lost his life after winning. But did you know that lotteries are also terrible for marriages? Many lottery-winning couples end in divorce within a few months of winning. Not only that, lottery winners get very depressed and bored easily. If you don't have to work for anything, then this gives you no reason to have any motivation or to do anything. Not only that, they lose a lot of their friends. Their friends will suddenly turn into leeches, trying to get as much money out of them as possible. And many lottery winners have actually admitted they wish they never won at all. So before you go out and buy that Mega Millions ticket, give this a think. Will your life really be improved by winning the lottery, or will it be a big inconvenience? How this man won the lottery 14 times. So first off, who is this mystery man? Chances are you've probably never heard of him before. Well, this man named Stefan Mandel was born in Romania in the 1960s. At that time, Romania was under oppressive communist rule. In the country, there was not many jobs, not much food, and a lot of poverty. Stefan only earned $88 a month, and he had to support his wife and 2 kids with that. He quickly realized he needed to find a way to get some serious money, and fast. Many of Stefan's friends turned to a life of crime to do this, but he saw another way out. Instead, he looked towards the lottery. All of his friends called him an idiot when he did this. He said he wanted to turn winning the lottery into a business. And to be honest, his friends were not wrong for doubting him. After all, you're more likely to win a gold Olympic medal than win the lottery. You're also more likely to get crushed by a vending machine. And you're 4 times more likely to get struck by lightning. But Stefan isn't just any old guy, he's a genius mathematician. That's right, he's said to be the first and only man in history to come up with a lottery formula. For years, he spent every minute analyzing theoretical probability. He studied mathematical papers dating back to the 13th century. And after those years of research, he finally wrote a number-picking algorithm. He dubbed this method combinatorial condensation. Using this complex algorithm, he could predict 5 of the 6 winning numbers in the lottery every single time. This increased his chances of winning from 1 in a few million to 1 in a few thousand. He then took a big risk. He risked his own money by buying large blocks of lottery tickets with the combinations he thought were most likely. But what exactly was his 6-step formula? Well, first off, he would calculate the total number of possible combinations. On average, this was around 4 million combinations. He would then find lotteries where the jackpot is 3 or more times the number of possible combinations. For example, if there were 4 million combinations, he would need a $12 million jackpot to make it worth it. He would then try and raise enough cash to pay for each combination. He would do this using his own money and also investors. For his biggest lottery win, he actually gathered 2,524 investors. He would then print out millions of tickets with every combination. This actually did used to be legal, but now you'd have to buy the tickets right from the store. He would then deliver those tickets to authorized lottery dealers. And then finally he would win the cash and pay his investors. That's right, he wouldn't get to keep all the money himself, as he would have to pay his investors. Not only would he have to pay investors, he'd have to pay taxes too. That's why he did this method 14 times to get a lot of money for himself. Stefan did this all through the late 60s to the early 1980s. And amazingly, he'd move around the world doing this. He began in Romania but quickly went to Australia, the USA and the UK. That's because these countries had the highest lottery winnings. And they also had the strongest currencies, for example the US dollar, the Australian dollar, and the pound sterling. But his biggest lottery win was his final one, and it was actually the lottery win which changed the lottery as we know it today. Firstly, Stefan set up a fake company named Pacific Financial Resources. He then collected 2,524 investors. Each of them put around $3,000 into this company. He then raised $5 million. He then rented a warehouse in Melbourne, Australia. It was there he set up 30 computers, 12 laser printers, and 16 full-time employees. Night and day they would print out 7 million lottery tickets with each different combination. This took 3 months and 1 ton of paper. Then in 1992 he invested that money into the Virginia lottery. Stefan more or less bought every combination from his investors' money. The jackpot was $27 million and he invested $5 million into it. As he expected, his method worked yet again and he won the $27 million jackpot. And remember, $27 million in the late 90s was much more. In fact, it was closer to $35 million at the time. Now, although Stefan's method of printing tickets was totally legal at the time because he did pay for it, some disagreed. In fact, the state of Virginia took this as an effort to cheat the system. As a result, for 4 years, Stefan was investigated by 14 international crime agencies. This includes the CIA, the FBI, the IRS, and the NCA. Eventually, though, he was paid the jackpot money. And after paying investors, he netted around $2 million for himself. But this was the last time Stefan ever did this, as they changed the rules. As you'll know from today's laws, you can no longer print your own lottery tickets. Instead, you need to go into the store and buy them yourself. This pretty much makes it impossible to buy tickets in such a bulk. Remember, Stefan printed millions of tickets, but no store in the world will have millions of tickets, so there's no way you can do this today. This means that today not even the greatest mathematicians could do Stefan's method. That's because every country in the world changed the lottery's laws to make sure this could never happen again. But you may be asking, where is this rich genius today? Well, today Stefan spends his time living in his island home of Vanuatu. This is a tiny island off the coast of Australia. He lives a very quiet life in a beach house on a tropical island as he's now a multi-millionaire. It's amazing that in just a few years he went from living in a poor communist country to being a multi-millionaire. Stefan says he's a man who takes risks in a calculated way. He said he does take risks, but the odds are always in his favor.